On today's show, how to create better living through better planning. Part one of this week's series on why long-term care coverage is essential with long-term care expert Maria Sarchi. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician in Insmark. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome to the show, Maria.
Well, thank you, Steve. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I haven't seen you since Mother's Day.
That's right.
And I want to welcome all our audience. We're heading into, this is our month of November, Long-Term Care Awareness Month.
Yes.
And last year, we spent some serious time, and I want to do upgrades and really bring us to a whole new thing. I have on my Twitter feed alone, I have 17 different LTC articles from the secular media. They have finally started to graduate and come over to our world.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're finally buying into our thinking. When we're talking about better living through better planning, I want to live better when I'm older. So I want to do the planning I need to get done now. How do we do that?
So better living through better planning. As we go through our work lives, as we accumulate our wealth, as we begin to prepare and think about retirement, one of the things that often is discarded is the opportunity to think about how to protect the wealth that we've built. And so when you think about retirement, it truly is about living life on your own terms. Better living through better planning. If we can help people see the power today in preparing for a long and healthy retirement, they will be able to live their retirement on their own terms, quite happily and well protected.
Now you said long, the word long is really taking on new meaning in our business now. We're looking at the new longevity issues. I noticed in one of your notes, you said there's 55,000 centenarians.
Yes, and do you know what that number will grow to by the year 2050?
I don't know, but I'll be 100 at that year.
Well, that number will grow to almost 500,000. Quite astounding.
Wow.
Quite astounding. But it's something to feel pretty happy about, the thought of being able to live longer. It's just an adjustment for our society. And part of that adjustment is making sure that we prepare accurately and with enough time in front of us so that if there is some type of a long-term health concern or a long-term care event, the folks that we serve are ready to go.
Well, when I'm planning for such a long time, and I'm looking at, I noticed that you cited a report in 2011 where the average life expectancy is at age 80.
Yes.
Now that means that's the average. So there's people that are, half of that number is on the other side of 80.
Oh, certainly.
So when we look at people who are 85, 90, 95, I mean, I have people I know in my neighborhood living in their homes with assisted living right now.
Yes.
And I see that happening already, and I'm thinking, what's that going to be like when I get to their age?
You know, it's a very different time in our society. 20, 30 years ago, this was not something, all of these assisted living facilities and all of these opportunities to still live in the comforts of your own home really wasn't something that was well known. And yet today, as folks enter their late 80s and their 90s and even into their early hundreds, the idea of being home serves them better because quite honestly, when people are in their own surroundings, they do better.
Well, that's my goal right now. I have no problem telling all our audience, I am targeting my home. We're still looking for our home, our final home, and we're going to make sure that it's geriatric proof. And we're excited about building it for our retirement years so that we can really accommodate our number one goal, which is to stay in our home as long as we can.
Yeah, when you think about retirement, you know, folks talk to me all the time about travel or about hobbies or about learning how to play the game of golf later in life. These are all things that you think about as you're going through your day-to-day earning your living. And it is just so very vitally important that we help folks to prepare that dream and then to protect that dream. So when we talk about better living through better planning, it really is about starting a thought process for pre-retirees and certainly for retirees to think about what that better living means to them. It'll be different for you than it is for me, and that's okay. The idea is that we plan for it.
Well, I'm trying to anticipate the number one expense load that's going to really be a problem in our older age. I mean, they look at, and I don't even know if this number included long-term care, but it did include regular medical costs, including Medicare premiums and the costs using Medicare. There, you were looking at an average couple spending about $250,000.
Oh, sure.
Now, if that's the medical that side, I don't think that even addresses the LTC side of this.
Yeah, it often does not. The studies that we see posted often have to do with healthcare costs, but we're really not encompassing long-term care into that. And we'll talk later on in the show about what average cost of care is today, most importantly, what it will look like 20 years from now. But the key thing is to look at the type of lifestyle that you want to have. Right, LTC should stand for a lifestyle to continue. Let's protect it. Let's protect to live in retirement the way that we want to.
Well, it says here only 15% of pre-retirees have even estimated how much it's going to cost for health care and long-term care in retirement.
Isn't that incredible?
Well, I can't believe that. And either we're not doing our job as advisors, or this is falling on deaf ears?
Well, I think it's more that long-term care is very consumer-driven, Steve, and not that advisors aren't doing their job, but it's an education process. And when you talk about the life insurance protection and you talk about the disability income protection, long-term care isn't something that flows next, and it should. And that's where we're seeing a change in the way our advisors are talking to clients and a change in the way clients are asking advisors for information.
One of the stats you brought up that I thought was shocking was 71% of couples aged 50 plus haven't discussed with anybody their long-term care or their health care during retirement.
Yeah, that's a fairly new study that's come about. And it was astounding to me to see those numbers, to see that healthcare costs are the #1 concern in retirement. And again, if we're just thinking about the medical aspect of it, without incorporating the long-term care component, we're missing something very big.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk about this idea that you've kind of framed called building confidence and building trust. Our LTC clients, our potential prospects, are looking for people to talk about this that they can trust. We'll be right back after the break. It's not how much money you make for your clients, it's how much money they get to keep, especially in retirement. But retirement income could cause Social Security benefits to be taxed. One tax advantage alternative is life insurance designed as a non-modified endowment contract that can generate tax-free income without taxing Social Security benefits. These contracts offer differing funding options depending upon your client's risk tolerance. For more information on how life insurance can be part of your retirement planning, just email me at steve@downtobusiness.tv. Brought to you by Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company. Well, welcome back to our second segment. Of course, I'm with Maria Sarchi, expert and author on long-term care. And Maria, I want to talk to you about this study that you saw from AgeWave and Merrill Lynch. They talk about some really key findings over 3,000 adults. And walk us through why this is important for us to know this kind of thing.
Well, when you look at a study that comes from an organization like AgeWave, where they really are looking at demographics of individuals, how those demographics will impact our economy, our society, our retirement planning, and then you have Merrill Lynch come in with them to really take a good segment of their own client base to understand what their clients are thinking about, how perhaps they need to pivot their own retirement planning needs. And it's vitally important for all of us when we see a study like this to come away with what these consumers are thinking about, right? So you've seen some of the stats, Steve. Number one concern that these retirees have is healthcare costs, right? How much will it be? Have I saved enough? Do I have enough? From a financial standpoint, healthcare costs can just throw a huge crater hole into somebody's retirement plan. And quite honestly, long-term care falls right into that.
Well, I'm really staggered by some of the stats that this study has come in. Here's one of them. It says 7% of those 55 to 64 feel very knowledgeable about Medicare options, but only 15% of the Medicare recipients do. That means if they don't know Medicare, which is a big deal for most retirees, how much do we not know as a recipient, as a regular between the ages of 55 and 64? How much do we not know about long-term care?
So true. And I cannot tell you how many times someone will say to me, well, won't Medicare cover my long-term care expense? And this is something we've been talking about for years, educating the American public that in fact, Medicare is not designed to cover long-term care for the long haul. It's a very short amount of time that they'll cover. And for a very small amount of time, will even cover a full cost. And there's pre-hospitalization that's required. So when you see that study come out, that folks feel they know about Medicare, you really have to wonder, well, how much do they understand about Medicare and long-term care?
Well, I'm looking at long-term care. So I want to look at my life as it will be when I'm retired later on in my retired life. I want to also say who's going to be my caregiver. Sometimes long-term care is just as much about the person who the insurance is on as the caregiver.
It's freedom and choice, right? I think that's probably the best way to say it. It's freedom and choice. We all want to have the ability in retirement to live it on our own terms. And if care is needed, you want to have control over where you receive that care and who's providing it. And when you're looking at the government programs, Medicaid in particular, you lose a lot of that control.
When we think about long-term care, we're looking to bring our advisors into a world where they need to incorporate this into their retirement planning. I'm going to say this year in 2014, I've seen maybe about a couple dozen plans come across my desk. Not one of them had long-term care in it.
Isn't that frightening?
It is.
I don't know how else to describe it other than to say, isn't it frightening? If you're working with a financial advisor or an estate planner, anybody who is helping you live that dream of what retirement will look like, long-term care really needs to be a part of it. Because as I said a few moments ago, a huge hole can be found right in the middle of your retirement plan.
Now, let's say we're awakening some of our advisors in our using this show. And let's say they say, I really don't know what to do though, Marie. How do I dip my toe into this whole thing? I'm not really knowledgeable.
Well, that's not something that is unusual to hear. It would be as if I were to try to go out and say that I was an expert on, mutual funds or an expert in a different area of the financial services field. Long-term care is my area of expertise, and so I would encourage any advisor who knows they need to build this into their practice to align themselves with someone who can educate them, teach them the high level, and be able to get down into the weeds if they need it. It's really important that they understand the marketplace, and we'll talk about that later in the show.
It sounds like we really need to make some strategic alliances with people who do this every day for a living. I mean, there are people out there that this is all they do.
Yeah. We advocate quite a bit for the American public, and that is not something that we should shy away from. That will grow as the years come on, and long-term care, particularly when you read a study like this, what we've seen, how uninformed the public is. There's no greater time than right now to start teaching the American public what this is all about.
It's interesting how people have picked up on once Obamacare got passed and some of the dovetailing it went into Medicaid, how those kind of worked in conjunction. I think most people still assume that this is part of overall LTC, long-term care, is really a part of medical insurance, and it really isn't.
It is not in the least. And that's a common misperception that we hear. And it's something that if we could just get folks, advisors, planners, to understand what's covered and what's not through Obamacare or just in general, what folks think their medical insurance covers or their health insurance covers, it's critically important that people understand they've got to look to private means to help to protect themselves.
When you look at long-term care, it is the #1 financial debacle when we have to pay bills that we don't have any money to pay on. No insurance, no hybrid products. Those numbers are staggering and can sink a person's retirement overnight. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance officer. Miss an episode? Just go out to our video archives. And remember, you could be wiser as an educated advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you tomorrow.